Hello and welcome back to my new and returning player's guide to World of Warcraft. Last week, we talked about the PvE features of the game, so it's only natural that this week we cover the PvP content of World of Warcraft. And we're going to kick it off with War Mode, which is a new Battle for Azeroth edition. So War Mode is a new feature that brings PvP back to the world in a really big way. It gives you an optional layer of risk and reward. So, optional, what does that mean? Well, it can be activated in Stormwind for the Alliance or Orgrimmar for the Horde, and it's totally opt-in. You'll have access to PvP talents while War Mode is active, so be sure to select which ones you want before you head out into the world. Now, there's a lot going on behind the scenes with War Mode, where the game pretty much dynamically balances populations on War Mode instances of the world to ensure faction balance. The long and the short of it is that if you turn on War Mode and then you go out into the world, you'll be running around with other players who have activated War Mode. Now, that means that if you run into a member of the opposite faction, well, you're free to attack them. And this adds a whole new level of risk to the game, but that's compensated for by you getting 10% more experience and quest rewards while you're leveling, and a 10% increase to world quest rewards if you're at max level. So yeah, that means more experience, more gold, and more artifact power. Then you're rewarded with PvP progression whenever you kill another player, and if you get a kill streak without dying, then you'll get the assassin buff, and that gives you an increase to your damage and healing of 15%. However, if you keep on killing enemies and you're on a real streak, well, that will cause you to be a bounty, and this will mean that you'll appear on the enemy's world map and they'll get a bunch of loot for killing you. Then finally, we also have airdrops which spawn in from time to time. Players of both sides will rush towards the airdrops, but only one faction can of course claim it, so naturally, that dispute is mediated by killing the other faction. Now, on the whole, War Mode is just a whole bunch of fun, and it's a new way to enjoy PvP and world content in this expansion. So, War Mode is the big update to World PvP, but of course, queued PvP still exists, so let's talk about that. Now, Battlegrounds were added to World of Warcraft all the way back in 2005, and they've been, of course, added to ever since. You can access them on the PvP panel by hitting the H key. Now, we're going to start off with unranked Battlegrounds. So, with those, there are two queues. There are regular Battlegrounds and epic Battlegrounds. This is a new distinction in this expansion. Broadly speaking, WoW has always had large 40-player Battlegrounds of a very epic scale, like Altaric Valley, and smaller, more personal ones with team sizes of 10, like Warsong Gulch. Now, the gameplay type of each is quite different, so it makes sense that they have their own queue. Now, Battlegrounds are instanced PvP content where two teams, one Horde, one Alliance, compete with each other over an objective to win. These are pretty much always objective based, and there are Battlegrounds with different types of objectives. As an example, Warsong Gulch and Twin Peaks are both capture the flag maps. Then Arithai Basin and Ruins of Gilneas are both King of the Hill kind of zone control maps. Then we actually have some hybrid game types like, say, Silver Shard Mines or Deepwind Gorge. Then epic Battlegrounds tend to be like big sieges and kind of massive scale things like Altaric Valley and Isle of Conquest. Now, the regular sized Battlegrounds are also available in rated mode. Now, that's where two pre-made groups go together, and that means that it's just a lot harder. You're facing a pre-made, enemy team who are coordinated, but you'll get far greater rewards. And you'll also, of course, get a rating, and that rating will depend on how much you win and lose and the rating of the enemy team. Then the higher you push your rating, the better your rewards will be. You'll also get a weekly box of loot for competing in rated PvP content, and the quality of the loot in that box will vary depending on your rating. Now, you'll also get a box of loot at the end of a battleground, as well as a bunch of honor and some conquest, which is directly tied into you earning gear, and it has a weekly cap. Now, you'll get a small amount of conquest from completing your random daily battleground, and then quite a lot more by completing rated battlegrounds, because they are quite a bit harder. Then finally, we've got brawls. This is a new feature that was added in Legion, and they're dead fun. Basically, they are twists on existing battleground game modes. So they're like fun new mechanics or twists on existing ones. As an example, in Arithai Basin, you can do that, but really dense snow cover, which means that visibility is greatly reduced, which puts importance on how well your team communicates. There's Tarn Mill versus South Shore, which brings just a massive, insane battle. There's Gravity Laps, which sends you regularly flying into the air, and these all come with just great rewards as well and a weekly quest, so it is totally worth giving them a shot. So that's Battlegrounds covered. Of course, they're the large-scale PvP content, so let's move on to the smaller scale, which is the arena. Now, arenas are where small teams of players face off in a range of small but very diverse maps in terms of their layouts. They are battle to the death where your goal is to kill the enemy team. And arenas are available in 2v2 and 3v3 formats and are also in 2 different modes. There are skirmishes and rated arenas. So skirmishes are match made and they will give you some honor plus a chest of loot at the end. They are fantastic for getting used to PvP content and they're particularly great for your initial training. And then rated arena it's probably the most hardcore form of PvP in the game. So as you complete matches, you will get your rating, and then depending on how well you do, your rating will go up or it will go down. It operates just like with rated Battlegrounds, so your weekly chest of PvP gear will be based off the highest rated PvP content that you've done, and the system will basically try to pair your team against teams who have an average rating that's pretty similar to yours. Then rated arena, of course, can be only queued for in a pre-made group, so that's either using the pre-made group finder or maybe reaching out to your friends or your guildmates. So that's the arena in World of Warcraft. It's definitely challenging, but it's really fun and really rewarding once you get used to it. Next up, PvP Islands. So this is a wholly new feature in Battle for Azeroth. Now, the islands themselves are pretty much exactly the same as how I covered last week. However, instead of being, the enemy team being AI controlled, well, in PvP Islands, it's real players, and this makes for a fascinating time. You're trying to get as much Azerite as you can, but you're also trying to deny the enemy Azerite. You're trying to predict what their strategy will be and things like that. Of course, since the layout of the islands is different every time, both teams will have to learn the new layout while at the same time trying to prevent the other team from exploiting that layout. It's incredibly replayable, and I really think you should give it a shot once you've got the basics down on the PvE Island expeditions. Then finally, I just want to round this off with tips. You see, doing well in PvP, it's about knowing your enemy, knowing what their big abilities are, what resources they have to play with, as well as knowing how to fully utilize your class. More than with most content, PvP is really demanding on your meta knowledge. This means that it gets incredibly deep once you get into it, especially once you're attempting to, say, bait out the enemy to use a big ability, and you're playing mind games with your enemy. So if you want to get into PvP, then I would grab a friend and I'd head into arena skirmishes, and then just pay attention to what your enemies are doing. Read up on the other classes, maybe even play some other classes. Another great way to understand PvP is by watching it being played competitively. It's got the benefit of having commentators guide you through each match, and the tournament overlay is really useful for showing you key information, such as the key abilities and cooldowns of the players who are involved. So that's pretty much how you get into PvP in World of Warcraft. It's incredibly replayable. It's very rewarding. It's a bunch of fun. And I just would recommend, watching the competitive stuff, trying out some skirmishes, trying out some battlegrounds, and just giving it the time to get acclimatized and then just used to how it works, because it's just an endless pit of really good quality content once you're onboarded to it. So there you go. That is PvP content in World of Warcraft. Check back next time where we will be going through a lot of just the other general features that the game has, because surprise, surprise, World of Warcraft is a very, very broad game. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.